US threatens to halt arms supplies as Israel presses attack on Rafah. And also, North Macedonia opposition wins big in elections. Good afternoon and salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Brendan Lepal and you're watching World Today. President Joe Biden said he would stop US weapons supplies to Israel if it attacks Rafah in southern Gaza, his most direct warning to date over the prosecution of the war against Hamas. In an interview with CNN, Biden also deplored the fact that civilians had been killed by the dropping of US bombs on the Palestinian territory. His fresh warning came after the US last week halted a shipment of huge American bombs to Israel as it appeared ready to proceed with a major attack on Rafah, a city packed with Palestinian civilians sheltering near the Egyptian border. Biden, a self-described Zionist, had long resisted stopping any of the $3 billion in weapons the United States sends each year to Israel and pushed Congress for an increase in the wake of the 7 October attack by Hamas that triggered the major Israeli retaliation. But US officials say privately that his hand was forced after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made clear he would go ahead with an assault on Rafah, defying Biden's public appeals to spare the city. Under increasing pressure from the left of his own party to limit arms shipments, the Biden administration paused delivery last week of 3,500 bombs. The Biden administration has previously taken smaller steps to show displeasure with Netanyahu, including imposing sanctions on extremist Israeli settlers and letting through a UN Security Council resolution that supported a ceasefire. In Rafah, displaced Palestinians gathered in front of a charity kitchen to receive food, fearing these lifelines could soon close due to shortages of aid supplies. Volunteers worry that the already difficult humanitarian situation could worsen as a result of the Rafah border crossing closure by the Israeli army.
ممكن تكون آخر يوم لأنه بجد الوضع صار مأساوي في رفح، نقص الوقود، نقص الغاز، حتى ما فيش إمكانيات إن إحنا نعملها، الناس بدأت تنزح وإحنا هنا عندنا نزحنا زيهم، إحنا كنا نساعد النازحين، إحنا بدنا حدا الحين يساعدنا.
Israeli tanks roll across the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt on Tuesday, cutting off a vital aid route and the only exit for the evacuation of wounded patients.
هذا عمل إنساني، هذا حرام إغلاقه، هذا إغلاقه من أجل المحتل، لا معابر ولا حاجة. الناس اللي زينا وين تاكل؟ وين تروح؟ مشردين في السوق في السوق. تركيا يا عم هذا عملت للناس كثير خير. وساعدتهم كثير بحياتهم، 4 شهور بياكلوا من تركيا، مش حاجة بسيطة، اللي معوش زي بياكل من تركيا ده بوفر كثير أموال. وللأسف كان اليوم آخر يوم، هذا للأسف الشديد يعني مجعز بالنسبة لنا والله.
The Israeli troops were conducting targeted raids on the Gaza side of the Rafah crossing and airstrikes across the Gaza Strip. It has told civilians, many of whom have been uprooted several times already, to go to an expanded humanitarian zone in Al-Mawasi, some 20 kilometers away. Meanwhile, Malaysian medic Dr. Ashok Kannan, who is working with the Mercy Malaysia organization, was on a brief mission in the Gaza Strip when Israeli tanks rolled across the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt, cutting off a vital aid route and the only exit for the evacuation of wounded patients.
Where is the paper?
Kannan, 38, is not sure when he will be able to leave. He says his wife and family are worried for his safety, but he tries to remain positive nonetheless, treating as many patients as he can as an influx of wounded continue to stream through the doors of the Kuwaiti specialty hospital in Rafah. Although the war is still happening, he feels safe within the walls of the Kuwaiti hospital and is left with no choice but to do his job by helping as many people as he could.
We hope everything will be good here. We hope the war will end as soon as possible, and we hope that all the patients here will get good care. And of course, we hope to be back home with our families in Malaysia as soon as possible.
Israel's offensive has killed 34,844 Palestinians in 7 months of war in Gaza. Most of them are women and children. Elsewhere, Israel destroyed around 50 homes belonging to Bedouins in the Negev desert, with Israel's far-right national security minister saying they were illegal constructions. Bulldozers flattened the houses in the Wadi al-Khalil village, sparking anger among members of its 500-strong community. Israel considers the homes built in Wadi al-Khalil to be illegal.
هذا يوم أسود وصمة عار في جبين هذه الحكومة اليمنية العنصرية التي حقيقة أعلنت حرب ضد مواطنيها، تقوم بهدم 48 بيت وترك النساء والأطفال في العراء.
טוב, בקשר למצב כמו שאתה רואה, ממש לא נעים. לא מגיע לנו כל הדבר הזה. אנחנו אנשים חיפשנו פתרון כבר במשך שנים, חיכינו לו פתרון הולם, וסגרו עלינו כל הדלתות מכל הדלתות.
Before Israel's creation in 1948, the Negev desert was home to approximately 92,000 Bedouins. But only 11,000 remain within Israel's borders after the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Many of them refused to be resettled in the cities, and Bedouins have continued to face difficulties in Israeli society ever since. Today, there are around 300,000, half of whom live in cities and half in villages not recognized by Israel. These villages lack most basic services such as garbage collection. In Brussels, more than 100 staff members of European Union institutions gathered in a protest against Israel's war in Gaza. Protesters laid 3 rolled-up white sheets and red stains on them on the square outside the European Commission's head office in the Belgian capital. On the 3 bodies, the words international law, EU treaties and genocide conventions were written in a protest Israel's military campaign in besieged Gaza.
Today we organize also this march, and as a symbolism, for all these values, EU values and the international law that should be respected, but doesn't seem to be since October 7 and the war in Gaza. We have seen that civilians being killed every day, and we stand here, we meet every week to stand for our EU values that we signed up for when we joined the European Union, and we just demonstrated this way.
In other news, North Macedonia's right-wing opposition won big in parliamentary and presidential elections that saw the Balkan country also elect its first female head of state. The country's right-wing Vamaro Dopamanai party earned an easy victory, with the ruling Social Democrats SDSM conceding defeat before any official results were announced. The State Election Commission later reported that Vamaro Dopamanai won at least 59 seats in the 120-seat parliament, with roughly 92% of votes counted. The SDSM won just 19 seats, with the rest divided among a slew of smaller parties. The Nationalist Party's success will likely have a major effect on the Balkan country's dream of joining the European Union. The U.S. House of Representatives swiftly defeated an effort by Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene to remove fellow Republican Speaker Mike Johnson from his leadership role. Democrats joined Republicans in a 359-43 vote to protect Johnson's speakership in a bid to avoid a replay of the chaos that occurred in October when Republicans ousted his predecessor, Kevin McCarthy. The Georgia conservative accused the Speaker of regularly siding with Democrats to consolidate power and of running a party that, quote, fuels foreign wars, tramples on civil liberties and increases our disastrous national debt. However, Green had failed to gain traction among her colleagues, and, crucially, she was not supported by Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. Many right-wing lawmakers are upset with the Speaker for relying on Democratic votes to pursue an agenda they see as a betrayal of their conservative outlook. However, rank-and-file lawmakers in both parties were wary of repeating the chaos of McCarthy's removal, which left the House paralyzed for 3 weeks as they struggled to find a replacement. Chinese President Xi Jinping arrived in Budapest in the last leg of his European tour aimed at strengthening already flourishing ties between Beijing and its closest EU ally. The Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban and his wife received Xi at the airport. Xi's 3-day visit to Hungary marks 25 years of diplomatic relations between the two countries. He began his European trip in France, a visit that was cordial, but also highlighted tensions between Beijing and the EU over the war in Ukraine and global trade. Earlier, Xi wrapped up his visit in Serbia 8 years after his last visit to the country. Xi and Serbia's President Aleksandar Vučić later appeared together to sign a joint declaration with commercial promises, including the purchase of new Chinese trains, new air links, and increased Serbian imports. China has poured billions into Serbia and neighboring Balkan countries, particularly into mining and manufacturing, and last year Beijing and Belgrade signed a free trade agreement. Scotland's new First Minister, John Sweeney, appointed ex-Finance Minister Kate Forbes as his deputy. Sweeney, 60, was elected unopposed as Scottish National Party leader on Monday, vowing to unify the pro-independence party that has been riven with increasing ideological infighting over policy. Forbes, the 34-year-old former finance minister in the SNP-led administration in Edinburgh, stood for the leadership in March 2023 after Nicola Sturgeon's surprise resignation. The SNP is too short of a majority in the 129-seat Scottish Parliament, which has powers to set policy in Scotland in areas such as transport, the environment, health and education. Shorn of the Greens pack. That means it is reliant on other parties to pass legislation. Sweeney said this week he remains committed to the ultimate goal of independence for Scotland from the rest of the United Kingdom. But she saw her efforts hamstrung by a UK Supreme Court, ruling that Scotland could not hold even a consultative referendum on the matter without London's approval. Next, former Fiji Prime Minister sentenced to jail. Stay tuned. Former Fiji Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama was sentenced to 1 year in prison for perverting the course of justice. Bainimarama was sentenced at Fiji's High Court in the capital Suva after being found guilty this year of quashing a police probe into alleged corruption at a Fijian university. The former military commander seized power in a bloodless coup in 2006 and remains a popular figure in the South Pacific nation. A crowd of supporters sang outside the court as the sentence was handed down before Bainimarama was handcuffed and led away into a waiting police truck. Bainimarama's wife, Maria, sobbed throughout acting Chief Justice Salesi Temo's sentencing remarks. The judge lashed former Naval Commodore Bainimarama for trashing his oaths of office. He did, however, reduce Bainimarama's sentence of the strength of character references provided by two former Fijian presidents. Fiji's former police commissioner, Sitevini Kiliho, a longtime ally of Bainimarama, was handed a 2-year prison sentence in the same case. US and Philippine forces sank a decommissioned China-made Philippine Navy ship during South China Sea war games, simulating an attack on an enemy vessel. The exercises are being held near the city of Lawak, around 400 kilometers south of Taiwan, amid a backdrop of increased confrontations between Philippine and Chinese vessels around South China Sea. The BRP Lake Kaliraya, a small tanker decommissioned by the Philippine Navy in 2020, slowly drifted below the water after being struck by waves of anti-ship missiles, rockets, cannon fire, and land-based artillery of Lawak. A Navy fast attack craft and frigate, an Air Force fighter and helicopter and land-based artillery from the Philippine military, as well as a US F-16 fighter, and an AC-130 gunship took part in the attack on the simulated enemy vessel. Journalists watched the event on video screens beamed towards a stream of sand dunes where 2 days earlier the two allies had also conducted a live-fire exercise with missiles and artillery to stop an imaginary invasion force landing on the Philippines' north coast. Beijing claims almost the entire South China Sea despite an international ruling that its assertion has no legal basis. It deploys hundreds of Coast Guard, Navy and other vessels to patrol and militarize the waters. In other news, former Spanish Football Federation chief Luis Rubiales will stand trial for his unsolicited kiss of national team player Jenny Hermoso after a High Court judge admitted the case. Rubiales faces 1 count of sexual assault and 1 of coercion for his alleged actions, which carry prison terms of 1 year and 18 months. The High Court said it would also try the former coach of the women's national team, Jorge Vilda, the team's current sporting director, Albert Luque, and the federation's head of marketing, Ruben Rivera. All 3 stand accused of coercing Hermoso into saying the kiss was consensual. Rubiales, 46, grabbed Hermoso and kissed her on the lips during the award ceremony after Spain's victory in the Women's World Cup in Sydney. Hermoso and her teammates said the kiss was unwanted and demeaning, but Rubiales argued it was consensual and denied any wrongdoing. The court set a bill of 65,000 euros for Rubiales' charge of sexual assault and another 65,000 euros to be posted jointly between Rubiales, Vilda, Luque and Rivera for the coercion charge. The case falls under the High Court's jurisdiction because the alleged offences took place abroad. An attempt to rob a jewelry store in Hong Kong. Here's the story. Hong Kong police arrested 5 men who were attempting to rob a jewelry shop with dramatic footage showing the masked assailants wielding machetes and sledgehammers in the store. The attempted daytime robbery took place in the bustling Sim Sha Sui shopping district when the 5 men rushed into a watch and jewelry shop and started smashing display windows. Less than 20 seconds later, according to the footage, plainclothes police officers rushed in with guns drawn, stunning the group who discarded their weapons and dropped to the floor. Bolivia launched the International Year of Camelids with an exhibition that gathered participants throughout the production chain. According to the organizers, the festival's aim is to boost the industry that sustained over 80,000 families in the Andean country. The UN proclaimed 2024 as the International Year of Camelids to honor the animal's key role in the economy and culture of 90 countries, including Bolivia.
Tenemos nuestros ganados camélidos para la producción de nuestra subsistencia animal. O sea, nosotros nos alimentamos de los ganados y también nuestras vestimentas de los ganados camélidos. Este día, como se declaró Día Internacional del Camélido, es muy importante para nosotros, una satisfacción, porque del ganado nosotros vivimos y de ellos nos beneficiamos.
In the South American nation, there are over 3 million camelids, of which 2 million are llamas. Around 20 dogs got trapped in a building in Brazil's southernmost state of Rio Grande do Sul, prompting volunteer rescuers to join to save them, as efforts continue to find victims of devastating rains that have killed 100 and left 128 missing. In the capital city of Porto Alegre, volunteers jumped on a boat to reach a building with difficult access, where the dogs were locked due to water. The storm caused floods that destroyed bridges and buildings, turned streets into rivers, and left more than 163 displaced in Rio Grande do Sul, which borders Uruguay and Argentina. Brazil's National Center for Natural Disasters said the southern area of the state was at high risk of more floods, with rainfall expected to restart. To sports, Real Madrid stunned Bayern to reach Champions League final. Stay tuned. That later. Now, Japan snatched a 2-1 victory to dash Malaysia's hopes of defending the Sultan Azlan Shah Cup as well as a place in the final at the Azlan Shah Hockey Stadium in Ipoh last night. The result saw Japan march into their first ever final in the competition with a game to spare and face Pakistan, while the Speedy Tigers will most likely feature in the playoff for third placing.
Number 15 is Ken Nagayoshi.
The Japanese started the match on an aggressive note before taking the lead through Kazumasa Matsumoto in the 24th minute. The start of the second half saw the Speedy Tigers up the tempo and Faisal Sari leveled the tie in the 31st minute. However, refusing to buckle under pressure, Japan went on the offensive mode and earned their reward in the 50th minute when Taiki Takade struck the winner. Pakistan and Japan have 10 points each after 4 matches, while Malaysia and New Zealand have 6 points each. Only the top 2 teams make it to the final in the round-robin format of the competition. Meanwhile, head coach Sarjit Kundan said his team had so many opportunities, especially in the second half. However, they failed to capitalize on it.
I think the players played well. I think we were a bit nervous because of the first 2 quarters. I think we hold back and play. But in the third quarter, I think we push up, a little bit of push up. Then we are getting the results. I think we have enough chances to secure the match, but we don't score. Then we make a mistake. From our build up, we make a mistake and they punish us. So that is hockey.
And in football, Real Madrid produced a spectacular comeback against Bayern Munich to reach the Champions League final after Joselu struck twice in the dying minutes to earn them a 2-1 win to progress 4-3 on aggregate. Alphonso Davies smashed the visiting German giants ahead in the second half. However, journeyman striker and backup option Joselu, on as a late substitute, produced a sensational comeback, scoring twice in the 88th and 91st minutes. Madrid had enjoyed the batch of the match, but it seemed Davies' superb strike had set up a repeat of the 2013 All-German final in London. Instead, Joselu consigned Bayern to a first trophyless season since 2012, his first goal coming after a handling error from Bayern goalkeeper Manuel Neuer. Neuer fumbled what appeared a simple Vinicius strike, and substitute Joselu gratefully bundled home from close range. With Bayern reeling, Madrid struck again, decisively through Joselu, who turned home after Antonio Rudiger cut the ball back to him. The goal was ruled offside, but officials overturned the decision after review. After nearly 15 minutes of stoppage time, Madrid earned the chance to go for their 15th Champions League trophy. Spanish champions Real Madrid face another German side, Borussia Dortmund, in the Wembley final on 1st June. And in tennis, Naomi Osaka marked her return to Rome Open for the first time since 2021 with a straight sets victory over Clara Burel in the first round on Wednesday. Former world number 1 Osaka came through against her 45th ranked French opponent 7-6, 6-1. The Japanese star sealed victory in 84 minutes, finishing with 27 winners, including 8 aces, and broke serve 4 times. Osaka said she was glad that she managed to close the game in 2 sets after just her second win on European clay this spring. It was the 26-year-old's first win against a top 50 opponent on clay since beating Victoria Azarenka at the French Open in 2019. Osaka, now ranked at 173 in the world, will face 19th seed Marta Kotsiuk of Ukraine for a place in the 3rd round. And still in tennis, Rafa Nadal expressed hopes his physique will allow him to keep playing as he looks ahead to the French Open and Olympics this summer. The 37-year-old Spaniard returned to competition in Brisbane in January after almost a year sidelined with a hip flexor injury. Speaking in Rome ahead of his Italian Open match against Belgian qualifier Zizou Bergs, Nadal said he still enjoys playing tennis but has to manage his body carefully.
1 month ago, for me, was almost impossible to think that I will be able to play in Barcelona, then in Madrid, and now being here in Rome. So things are happening, and it's true that I was able to accept the challenge, to accept that at some moments I was not able to push the way that I wanted to push.
Nadal also spoke about the injury risks that top players face due to their workloads, with young stars Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner missing in Rome due to injury. The 22-time Grand Slam singles champion enters the Italian Open unseeded and ranked 305th in the world. And in cycling, French rider Benjamin Thomas outsprinted his breakaway colleagues to win the 5th stage of the Giro d'Italia, giving the Cofidis team their first victory this year. The four-man break escaped the peloton after the final intermediate sprint of the day, with 80 km left to ride, and held off the chasing pack despite the best efforts of the main sprint contenders' teams. Italian Andrea Pietrobon looked set to reach the line first after the 178-kilometer ride from Genoa to Lucca, but his push for victory inside the last kilometer came too early and he was caught before the finish. Pietrobon had to settle for third place, with Denmark's Michael Valgren coming in second behind Thomas, who won his first Grand Tour stage, while Tadej Pogačar still holds the overall lead. The main group arrived on the line 11 seconds behind the winner, with Pogačar safely in the top 30, maintaining his 46-second lead over Geraint Thomas of Ineos Grenadiers. Thursday's stage will take the riders 180 km from Viareggio to Rapolano Terme. The Olympic flame arrived in France at Marseille on board a 19th century ship in front of 150,000 spectators for a ceremony that posed the first major security test for the organizers of the 2024 Paris Games. The flame was brought to the southern French port from Greece on the three-masted Pelham, 79 days before the Olympics begin. As the ship entered Marseille's old port with hundreds of small boats trailing behind, planes from the Patrouille de France display team traced the Olympic rings in the sky. Fireworks tore into the sky as the Pelham docked after its 12-day voyage from Greece, where the flame was lit in ancient Olympia on 16 April. French President Emmanuel Macron praised the unprecedented effort of the security forces in Marseille and said, after watching the flame arrive, that he hoped the Olympics would bring France together. Olympic gold medal winning swimmer Florent Manadou carried the torch from the deck of the ship. Manadou passed it to Paralympic champion sprinter Nantana Keita, who handed the torch to French rapper Yul to light a cauldron. The arrival of the flame marks the start of a 12,000-kilometer torch relay across France and its far-flung overseas territories. And that's it from us this afternoon. In our top story, US threatens to halt arms supplies as Israel presses attack on Rafah. Do join us again tonight on TV1 and Saluran Berita RTM for more. And we leave you with drone views of snow-capped Santiago metropolitan area in Chile after an exceptional snowfall, which took residents by surprise in the Austral autumn. Till then, I'm Brandon Paul. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.